Okay, so the first F word in the glossary here is the false self. The false self is the conditioned self in a world in which fear of the other, fear of humiliation by each other, colors the psycho-spiritual field as a whole, to the extent that we cannot become fully present to each other in our being. I often describe the false self as an outer self, because we actually do experience the self thus created as an enacted performance, unmoored from the center of our unrecognized being. Although we are normally not fully conscious of our false self's enacted quality, because the falseness of the false self has been denied in the course of our conditioning. The false self is never entirely false, or we would all be schizophrenic, and the residue of love and sensual communion that subtends, holds from underneath, that subtends our conditioning, always moves us forward toward the next encounter with hope and with the potential for true transcendence through the movement of social change. Okay, let's unpack that a little bit. The false self. So, the child is born and excitedly, with full presence, eyes there, fully there, encounters the other. And the other says, "Oh, Johnny, you're so cute." And all of a sudden, this being seeking full contact with the other is, through the sounds made and the gesture and feeling quality and way of being of the other, is supposed to be Johnny, apparently. And starts to become Johnny, who smiles this way, the way he's seen by the others. See what I mean? And so that becomes, I have never been recognized before in this example. That becomes, oh, that's me. That's who I am. I can even see myself in the mirror there. That's me. And that is, I call the false self, because it's not connected to my full presence. It's this thing I'm enacting that the other has projected onto me that he says is me. And so I become like that. And soon my whole personality develops like, so I'm like entering the entire suit of being Peter Gabel, let's say. And that, to the extent that suit is not anchored to my being and the true being of the other, that supple encounter of mutuality, but instead I become the outside glove of myself. To that extent, I've enacting a false self that I do not experience. I'm not aware of its falseness because it's all that I am. Is I have to become the way that I've been seen, and then I identify it as who I actually am, as if it were really me. Only later, if I'm lucky enough to experience a social movement, I may realize there's so much more to me than just that good little boy that I was being for those years and years and maybe decades and decades. And because I may enter into relations with others where my whole being is perceived, and I'm able to perceive the being of the other in true mutual recognition. Having said that, as I say also here, the false self is not wholly false. This is very important, because well, there's two aspects to this point. One is there's a lot of good that's in culture, in the way that we are brought up to become, in the way that we've been seen by prior generations, because all these prior generations that have preceded our birth are human beings longing to see and be seen by each other. And that coexisting longing and good-heartedness and essential loving energy is also present in the way that the self is created and then passed on generation to generation. So the book makes a kind of separation between the false self and true, authentic, mutual recognition. But it's more complicated than that. There are aspects of our conditioning that are always carrying forward that hope that the next encounter will be better, will be more real, be more fully realizing of myself and the other and the world itself. I'm not conscious of that. I won't become conscious of it until the opportunity presents itself for me to experience it directly. I can only feel it as a frustration. I might drink all the time, smoke all the time, and take drugs all the time because of a pain that I'm feeling inside of me that's not realized through the way I have to be in the world. But when I can actually be that, when that pain can come out in the right way, when I can be seen with relief for who I really am, then I can start to become a more present human being. And the false self can play a smaller part, a smaller and smaller part in how I'm existing in the world with others. So the false self that's in the title of the book, Social Movement, the subtitle, Social Movements and the Dissolution of the False Self, that's the point that I'm describing there, is this gradual dissolution of the artificiality of our fearful existence, where we construct a moat between each other and false selves separating each other, and we transcend that toward becoming fully present to each other. Okay.